How do you feel about what's going on?
Well, I fully expected him to be convicted because this has been a rigged situation. A Manhattan jury, district attorney throwing everything, as well as the help from the Biden administration. I think it's a sad day, but it's also a good day because it woke a lot of people up to what's happening in this country.
Dude, what is happening in this country?
You know that what this committee should be doing? We should be recommending you to be prosecuted. We should be writing a criminal referral because you should be prosecuted for crimes against humanity. You belong in prison, Dr. Fauci.
We're attacking doctors. Okay, Pol Pot.
If the president decides that his rival is a corrupt person and he orders the military or orders someone to assassinate him, is that within his official acts that for which he can get immunity?
It would depend on the hypothetical, but we can see that could well be an official act.
It could.
I don't know if you've seen that entire video and transcript. Basically, I almost have to just give it to Trump's lawyer in the Supreme Court because you couldn't straw man the guy. I mean, whatever the Supreme Court justices threw at him, they're like, so what if the president just wants to assassinate this political rival? It's like, oh yeah, that falls under this too. Whatever they made up that was terrifying. He's like, yeah. I gargle with scotch in the morning, and that also works. That works. I mean, he didn't back down from anything. He wasn't like, well, hey, let's not get silly here. He was like, yeah, let's go. Like, whew, terrifying. Yeah, you saw a little bit. The more of the video is also terrifying.
So I said, let me ask you a question. And he said, nobody ever asked this question. And it must be because of MIT, my relationship to MIT. Very smart. He goes, I say, what would happen if the boat sank from its weight and you're in the boat and you have this tremendously powerful battery and the battery's now underwater and there's a shark that's approximately 10 yards over there. By the way, a lot of shark attacks lately. Do you notice that? A lot of shark. Do I get electrocuted if the boat is sinking, water goes over the battery, the boat is sinking? Do I stay on top of the boat and get electrocuted? Or do I jump over by the shark and not get electrocuted? Because I will tell you, he didn't know the answer. He said, nobody's ever asked me that question.
What if the battery falls in the water and then there's a shark, and then the battery's the shark's coming towards the battery, and you got to get away from the shark, but also the battery. And this is what I ask people at MIT.
Because I will tell you, he didn't know the answer. He said, nobody's ever asked me that question. I said, I think it's a good question. I think there's a lot of electric current coming through that water.
I love how he ends the video with, no one's never asked me this question. Yes, because it's insane. He's like, oh, I'm an intelligent person. I'm at MIT. And no one else comes up to me and asking me insane questions that sound like this. I mean, that aren't, 4 years old.
The judge who was corrupt. There's a rigged trial, a disgrace. They wouldn't give us a venue change. We were at 5% or 6% in this district, in this area. This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here.
It's probably the weirdest election I've ever seen in my life. This is an election where we all have to go out and campaign for someone who most of us don't like. We have very valid reasons for not liking, right? And at the same time, we're like, all right, Project 2025 is right there. And that will be like literally the death of American democracy. That if they're able to do the things that they want to do, it will be the death knell of American democracy. And it is terrifying. And it's terrifying. And as usual, there's, a lot of people on both sides, sort of this apathy of like, Project 20, when I speak to MAGA, it's like, well, I don't know what this Project 2025 is. I feel like you're exaggerating it. People on the left, it's like, well, you know what? Project 2025 is already here. Biden has already done a bad thing. And, things like that. And they will point to Democrats that act like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema and, other neo-libs. That's scary. And it is terrifying to me. During Trump's first term, a lot of the things he wanted to do, he couldn't do because there were people in his administration that were like, nah, you really can't send tanks into protests. You really can't just round people up and shoot them. You really can't just declare yourself the winner of an election and, blah, blah, blah. You really can't fire the head, your attorney general, and replace him with this insane crony. I mean, he wanted to do things that were absurd. And you had people that were also awful people. They were like, nah. So their new plan, Project 2025, Trump's new plan, and MAGA's new plan is, you know what? We weren't prepared enough. When we get in there, we fill the place with Trump loyalists and we get it popping.
The DOJ is completely corrupt from top to bottom. It's going to have to be purged. It's going to have to be restructured. They're going to have to get rid of tons of billets over there and lots of personnel on the afternoon of January 20th, 2025. They understand this. And the FBI is the American Gestapo. As an institution, they are not worthy of going forward. That's going to have to totally be restructured. I've been strongly for getting rid of the FBI, starting over again with some federal law enforcement to the degree you need it.
This isn't just Steve Bannon talking. If you read Project 2025, it is 900 pages. And when you think about it, you're like, oh, 900 pages, there must be some language buried in there. No, every single page is fun for the whole family. Every single page is something awful. And it is about consolidating power and making sure power goes unchecked. These people are not woke. They don't want to get rid of the FBI because the FBI, ruined Martin Luther King's life. No, they want to get rid of the FBI because they don't need someone checking their power. All right, they're not marching with Black Lives Matter. They're not like redoing law enforcement to serve the greater good. No, they're redoing law enforcement so that they can operate with no checks and balances. They've talked about this, and as a big dirty leftist, that does sound like, oh, abolishing the FBI. Like, okay, like I'm kind of, but like they want to abolish it because of human rights violations, that and them getting called out for very clear-cut crime. I want this to be over. I want a day where we don't have to pretend that we also like the FBI. Like, we hate the FBI, but for much different reasons. I'm going to leave you with this one thing. So back in the 90s, there was an election in Israel, okay? So the incumbent, Shimon Peres, he was running again. There was a raid on a refugee camp that killed, I think, 100, 200 civilians. And it was nasty. I mean, there's civilians. They did not need to die. And people were upset. So the Arab electorate in Israel said, we're going to stay home. And he lost by a half a percentage point to Benjamin Netanyahu. Yeah, okay. Shimon Peres was, the raid on the refugee camp was terrible. However, he was someone who was an architect of the Oslo Accords, and he wanted to, implement the Oslo Accords. Netanyahu does not believe in the Oslo Accords and did not believe in implementation of the Oslo Accords. So Netanyahu also wants Trump to win. That's not nuanced or anything. He very much wants him to win.